Hello everyone and welcome back to another ASMR True Crime Story Time. The case that I have for you today is the Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom murders. It was January the 6th, 2007 and Knoxville residents Channon Christian, aged 21, and Chris Newsom, aged 23, had recently started dating. That evening, the couple chatted and enjoyed dinner at a local restaurant. They planned to go to a friend's apartment to watch a movie later that night, and then they were supposed to go on to attend another friend's birthday party. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that their paths were about to cross with a handful of angry individuals looking for a way to take their rage out on innocent people. Marcus Davidson's life was not going well. He didn't have a dime to his name, and he didn't even have a set of wheels. His main source of income was selling dope on the streets. In the early days of 2006, he was on probation for carjacking and was suspected in a string of robberies. His brother, Levis Cobbins, came to Knoxville to celebrate New Year's with him. The two hadn't seen each other in a very long time, due to Davidson's incarceration. Travelling from Kentucky, Levis brought with him his girlfriend Vanessa Coleman and his friend George Thomas. All three of them were jobless, careless and penniless. Cobbins and Thomas were also homeless. Coleman could have turned to his salt-of-the-earth family for help but chose not to. Cobbins soon wore out his welcome, and Davidson grew increasingly angry at what he viewed as his house guests' freeloading ways. Davidson decided to take his rage out on his girlfriend, Daphne Sutton, first. He beat the woman, so she left him on January the 5th, but this only enraged him more. Now he was thirsty for blood, and he was about to enact his revenge in a manner that far eclipsed the abuse that Sutton had endured at his hands. When January the 6th rolled around, Davidson had a plan to solve his financial and transportation woes. He didn't care if he had to go back to prison. Been there, done that. A dude's got to do what a dude's got to do, he thought. So with the help of his brother and his friend Eric Boyd, he decided to carjack someone. Channon and Chris left their friend's apartment in North Knoxville off Washington Pike and got into Christian's Toyota 4Runner to go to their other friend's birthday party. Channon was sitting in the driver's seat and Chris was standing in the open door of the vehicle kissing her when they suddenly found themselves staring at the barrel of a gun. Boyd and Davidson quickly took control of the 4Runner. Cobbins hopped in the driver's seat of Boyd's borrowed car. Boyd and Davidson drove the terrified and confused couple to Davidson's Chipman Street home, as Cobbins followed closely behind. When Chris didn't come home that night, his parents, Mary and Hugh Newsom, weren't concerned. At 23, Chris mostly came and went as he pleased. If he didn't come home, they assumed he spent the night at a friend's house. Channon, on the other hand, still called home to tell her parents where she was going and when they could expect her to come home. When she didn't do so on the night of January the 6th, Gary and Dina Christian knew something wasn't right and they immediately began to panic. The Newsoms also started to panic when Dina called them to alert them to the fact that their daughter had been neither seen nor heard from since the previous night. Dina told the Newsoms that she was going to file a missing persons report. On January the 7th, Xavier Jenkins, an employee of Waste Connections, was going about his daily duties when he made a grim discovery. It was the lifeless charred body of a young man who had been dumped near the railroad tracks between 9th and Cherry Streets. It was the body of Christopher Newsom. The news of the discovery sent shockwaves through the community, particularly through the Christian household. Shannon's parents desperately clung to the hope that their little girl was somewhere out there, still alive, but they couldn't deny that it was coming Shannon's vehicle was located by her family, parked on Gilder Avenue. A search of the vehicle resulted in the discovery of fingerprints belonging to Lamarcus, leading investigators to track him to his rental home on Chipman Street. Tragically, David's home was found to be Shannon's final resting place. On January the 9th, her battered body was discovered there in a trash can, just 2 blocks from where her vehicle was found. There is no good way to be murdered, but a quick bullet to the heads of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom would have been more merciful, but both went through hours of horror and agony before they took their final breaths. When Christopher's body was found along the railroad tracks, he had a sock in his mouth. His ankles were bound with his own belt, and his hands were bound behind his back. A bandana was wrapped around his face, and his head was covered with a sweatshirt tied around his neck with shoestrings. In the final hours of his life, Christopher had been raped with an object and forced to walk barefoot to the railroad tracks. A gunshot to the neck and back had left him paralysed, and as he lay on the tracks he was shot in the head with a .22 caliber pistol. Then Christopher's body was wrapped in a comforter, doused with gasoline and set ablaze. Shannon's ordeal was even more nightmarish. Davidson tied her up inside his Chipman Street home, where she was raped repeatedly in every possible fashion. Her genital region showed severe wounds, suggesting that someone either kicked her or beat her, leaving a massive pool of blood on the floor. Cobbins testified in court that he promised Channon that he would free her if she gave him oral sex. Forensic evidence showed that Channon was orally raped with such force that a membrane in her mouth was severed. She suffered 2 blows to the head and was dragged into the living room, where bleach was poured down her throat in an effort to erase DNA evidence. Davidson broke her neck, and then using strips of fabric from a bedding set, Channon was hog-tied. Her body was wrapped in black garbage bags, and her head was wrapped in a white plastic grocery bag. Finally, her attackers stuffed her inside a trash can in the kitchen and left her to slowly suffocate to death. On January the 11th, authorities located and arrested Cobbins, Thomas and Davidson. The following day, Boyd was served with a federal warrant. Trials for the 4 defendants began in May of 2008, and a total of 46 charges were brought against them, including felony murder, first-degree murder, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, aggravated rape, murder and theft. Eric Boyd was not mentioned in any of the charges. In court documents, Letvis Cobbins and Letvis Davidson are both the same person. All federal charges were related to carjacking. Cobbins, Davidson, Coleman and Thomas all faced the death penalty, with Davidson listed as the ringleader. Eventually, Boyd was charged with accessory after the fact. He was tried for hiding out and helping Davidson evade arrest. In August 2008, Cobbins was convicted of the first-degree murder in the death of Channon and facilitation of murder in connection to the death of Christopher, and he was sentenced to life in prison. On October the 28th of that year, Davidson was convicted on counts of first-degree murder and first-degree felony murder. Additionally, he was found guilty of facilitation of aggravated rape, and he was given the death penalty. On December the 8th, George Thomas was convicted on all charges, including more than a dozen counts of felony murder and 2 counts of premeditated murder, and he was given life in prison. In May of 2010, Vanessa Coleman was convicted on charges of facilitation of murder, kidnapping, rape and theft of Channon. She was found not guilty on charges related to Christopher's death. On July the 30th, she was sentenced to 53 years in prison. In January of 2011, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or the TBI, announced that he was investigating Knox County Criminal Court Judge Richard Brumgartner, who presided over the trials of Cobbins, Davidson, Coleman, Thomas and Boyd. It seems that Brumgartner had a bit of a drug problem. He was a well-known and much-respected judge in Tennessee. He pushed to allow cameras in the courtroom for the first time in the state. He also founded a drug court program that was so successful it became a model for all of Tennessee. During his time on the bench, he presided over several high-profile cases, apart from the Christian Newsom murders. Rumours about some of his lifestyle choices began to emerge in the mid-2000s, but he was so well liked that those in the legal community initially defended him in spite of the gossip. Knoxville attorney Gregory P. Isaacs said upon Brumgartner's death in January 2018 at the age of 70, quote, "Judge Brumgartner was a personable, fair and firm judge who always tried to do the right thing. He always conducted himself with passion and integrity. We're all human," end quote. Certainly, judges are not immune to personal problems, but his actions brought into question his ability to rule with clarity. Brumgartner developed an addiction to painkillers while being treated for a broken toe. It is a very common and very tragic story. Opioid addiction is a scourge on American society, and those who wrestle with opiate addiction typically become dependent on the drug through no fault of their own. Until very recently, doctors commonly prescribed longer than necessary courses of painkillers for ailments that could easily be treated with over-the-counter medicines like ibuprofen or paracetamol. When opiates were introduced to the market, Big Pharma assured them that they were safe and non-habit forming. If you want to really understand how the opium epidemic swept the country, Google the Sackler family and Oxycontin. The problem with opioids is that the longer you take them and the higher the dose, the less they work. In fact, opioids cause something called rebound pain. Judge Brumgartner certainly didn't plan on becoming an opioid addict, but unfortunately he did, and he began buying pain pills from a man named Christopher Lee Gibson, who was on probation in Brumgartner's court. Brumgartner would meet Gibson in a trailer park to buy 10 to 20 pills as often as 3 times a week. Other times Brumgartner purchased pills from Dina Castleman, a participant in the judge's famed drug court program. In May of 2009, Coleman came to Brumgartner looking for help. Instead, the judge forced her to become his mistress and forced her to supply him with painkillers. Brumgartner also had a drinking problem, and in June of 2007, he was prescribed a drug to control anxiety related to alcohol withdrawal. At one point, Brumgartner was getting pills from 12 different doctors, including a veterinarian. In the course of 28 months, the judge purchased 2,243 pills. Eventually, it became clear that the rumours were true when Brumgartner began slurring his speech while overseeing cases. This prompted the TBI to begin looking into the rumours, and in March of 2011, Brumgartner pleaded guilty to related charges and he resigned from his position. His guilty plea initially spared him any jail time, but he ended up with a felony conviction and a 6-month jail stint for lying to investigators. As you can imagine, the controversy called into question Brumgartner's ability to preside over the Christian Newsom case. On December 1st, 2011, Judge John Kerry Blackwood ordered new trials for Cobbins, Davidson, Thomas and Coleman, citing structural errors in the original trials. So on January 12, 2012, Judge Blackman denied the state's appeal to prevent the trials and denied the defence's request for a change of venue, stating that the jurors would not be selected from Knox County mistakes. He was confusing the defendant's name. The following month, the District Attorney General's office asked for Blackwood to rescue himself before considering whether Cobbins, Davidson and Thomas should be retried. Prosecutors said in the motion, quote, "The willful failure of this court to follow the Tennessee Supreme Court's guidance indicates this court has lost all semblance of fairness and impartialness." End quote. Just 2 days later, Blackwood again ordered new trials for the duo. In doing so, the judge cited Rule 25, which was also cited in the Supreme Court decision. The rule allows the successor judge, Blackwood, to conclude he or she cannot perform the duties of the original judge because of the failure to proceed at the trial or for any other reason. Blackwood added that he could not serve as the 13th juror in the Christian Newsom case. In mid-June, during a hearing intended to decide whether Blackwood should step down from the case, Blackman said that he would not rescue himself, stating, quote, "I intend to be captain of this ship and to run this ship," end quote. Finally, on October the 31st, Judge Blackwood was replaced by Judge Walter Kurtz. Kurtz was ordered to oversee the cases of Cobbins, Davidson and Thomas. Judge Blackwood was set to still oversee Coleman's trial in November. Only Coleman and Thomas received new trials. On the 20th of November, a jury convicted Coleman on 13 of the 17 counts in the murder of Channon Christian. She was again found not guilty for crimes connected to Christopher Newsom. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison. In May 2013, Thomas was found guilty of all 38 charges in connection to the kidnapping, rape and murders of Channon and Christopher. The following month he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus 25 years. In 2014, Coleman was denied parole and would not be given another opportunity until December 2020. On December the 19th, 2016, the Tennessee Supreme Court upheld Davidson's 2 death sentences, and in the spring of 2008, Boyd was indicted on first-degree felony murder, first-degree premeditated murder, especially aggravated robbery, especially aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape charges in connection to the deaths of Channon and Christopher. On June the 27th, 2019, Boyd's attorneys filed a motion to hold the trial at a different venue. The motion was denied. Boyd's trial began with jury selection on August the 5th. Amongst those selected were 4 white men, 1 black woman, 1 black man, 1 Hispanic woman, 5 white women and 4 alternatives, which were 3 white men and 1 white woman. On August the 5th, opening statements in Boyd's trial began. Exactly a week later, closing arguments were made. On August the 13th, Boyd was found guilty on all counts, and in September, Boyd was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 90 years. In addressing the courtroom, Boyd simply smiled and said, quote, "I'm not guilty," end quote. Thank you for listening to the Channon and Christopher story. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like,